¿Me oyes? Can you hear me? Can you hear me through the... Test, 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 test. ¿Me oyes? ¿Se oye bien? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No se oye por la sala, ¿no? ¿Se oye por la sala? Hola, hola, hola. Se lo voy a poner a ella. Can we put it on this?
Yeah, of course. So does it go on below?
Close like this, and then you do whatever you want with the hair.
Okay, maybe I'll try underneath. But I already keep it until the lecture.
Yes.
Okay.
We can. You can mute it, but now we are testing the sound.
Okay, should I say something?
Yeah, you can talk to me. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Russia.
From?
Russia, yes.
Are you Portuguese?
No, I live in Portugal for six years.
And the company is
Er den litt lav? Hei, hei! Velkommen alle sammen til høstens siste forelesning. And a special welcome to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Portugal. Today we have a joint lecture with the National Museum. But first I will tell you the rest of the semester in Norwegian. Vi har jo bare ett arrangement igjen før det blir jul. Og i år så har vi utvidet årets julefest med en julemiddag for små kontorer, hvor målgruppen da de som jobber alene eller under 5 ansatte. I dag siste frist for påmelding til det. Så gå inn på vår Vips, det en QR-kode i baren hvis dere har lyst til å være med på det. Så får vi bestilt riktig antall. Vi utvider også julefesten sånn at vi åpner dørene klokka 9. Og da serverer vi litt sjokolade og kaffe og litt avec. Sånn at de som glad i å prate rekker å gjøre det før det braker løs som vanlig med DJ og julefest klokken 22:30. Det veldig lurt å kjøpe billetter på forhånd. I fjor så måtte noen til og med klatre inn i vinduet fordi de hadde så lyst til å komme på festen og det var fullt. Men det ikke lov. Hvis du har veldig lyst til å komme på fest, kjøp heller billett på forhånd. Vi vil gjerne takke våre hovedsamarbeidspartnere AFAG STO og våre samarbeidspartnere Garnes Data, Trefokus, Vestre og Oslo Design Fair. Vi vil også takke Hedmark og Oppland Arkitektforening for streaming. Og før vi begynner dagens forelesning vil vi gjerne ønske STO velkommen til å fortelle litt om seg, og de har også en liten utstilling og litt mat og drikke til dere ute i gangen. Så først velkommen til STO.
Jeg ble så voksen med lesebriller. Det godt tegn. Da har vi holdt på i mange år. Truls Valentinsen heter jeg, bergenser. Har jobbet i STO nå i 4 år. Før det så var jeg 18 år i Saint-Gobain, som verdens største byggevareprodusentselskap. Har laget en presentasjon, skal fortelle litt veldig kort, og vi skal ikke bruke for lang tid på det. Skal vise 2 filmer som jeg tror veldig inspirerende for arkitekter. Og så har vi laget en bok, og den har vi med oss ganske mange eksemplarer. Det en referansebok som jeg håper hvert kontor som ønsker det kan ta med seg og bla litt og få litt inspirasjon i forhold til det. Så har jeg med meg min kollega Erik Grønner. Han spesialist på flooring, sjef på flooring i Norge. Sånn at vi tar en prat om det etterpå når vi har sjans til det. Vi så heldige å være spesialister på pussfasader. Og en pussfasade behøver ikke alltid være 1,5 mm korning. Det finnes et hav av muligheter, og vi her for å hjelpe arkitektene i Norge for å lage litt tøffe, ålreite pussfasader. Vi har også en egen arkitekt ansatt i København, og den skal ikke være en konkurrent til arkitekter i Norge, den skal være en bistands... Han skal hjelpe arkitekter over hele Norge hvis man ønsker bistand og innspill i forhold til de prosjektene som dere involvert i med våre produkter. Så det kan være en grei ting å ta med seg i forhold til det. Ellers vi stor på utemiljø, vi har innemiljø og vi har industriparkering. Vi skal ikke si for mye om det, men bare vite at vi har det. Så skulle jeg gjerne kommet videre her, Der. Så vi over på mitt felt, og som jeg jo spesialist på fasader og har holdt på med det nesten halve livet. STO mest kjent for STO Ventec pussfasader. Vi har luftete fasadesystemer, vi har isolerte systemer, glimrende til nybygg og glimrende til rehabilitering som litt i skuddet for tiden. Vi har ganske så stort utvalg i kreative overflater. Her ser vi et lite bilde av en brick-fasade som lean brick. Og ikke minst lotusanmalingen og pussene våre vi også ganske så kjent for i forhold til det. Han henger grådig. Der kommer han. Jeg vet ikke om han hoppet da, men...
Jeg tror den hoppet litt.
Ja. Ja, hvis vi kan få den ned igjen der, så hadde det vært veldig fint. Her ser vi lean brick, som vi leverer ganske mange prosjekter av i hele Norge. Det betyr at arkitektene har fullstendig kreative utfoldelsesmuligheter. Vi kan ligge bricken liggende eller stående, eller du kan ta den i taket, du kan gjøre hva som helst, og vi har et rikelig stort utvalg i forhold til lean brick. Og fordelen med lean brick ganske mange i forhold til kreativitet. Vi får med oss en skikkelig luftekonstruksjon bak, som gjør at den veldig holdbar. Ja, så spør oss om det etterpå i forhold til det. Så har vi stor signatur, som jeg var litt inne på i sted. En pusset fasade behøver ikke være grå og kjedelig, men han kan være kreativ, og vi kan hjelpe med både sjablonger og uttrykk for å tilpasse hva man måtte ønske. Vi har muligheten for glassmosaikk. Vi har muligheter for stor dekoprofiler. Vi kan gjenskape, vi har glassfasader. Jeg har akkurat levert Moxie-hotell i Bergen, ikke i Tromsø. Det viktig å presisere. Men med Moxie-hotell i Bergen blitt veldig fint. Så her har vi muligheten, og så selvfølgelig å kombinere da, muligheter, både med glass og puss og hva det måtte være. Så har vi min kollega Erik Grønner, som spesialist på flooringprodukter, og der har vi ganske mye. Sten og terrasso kanskje det Sto mest kjent for. Vi har levert prosjekter over hele Norge i forhold til det. Og vi har barrikade, komfort og monodeko og CS 650 designgulvløsninger, form og farge. Her har vi enorme muligheter i forhold til det. Sten og terrasso har vi levert prosjekter, og vi holder på nesten ukentlig rundt omkring i Norges land med dette. Her vi da på Grand Café i Oslo. Her ser vi litt fra Kongsberg Maritim. Blir utrolig flotte bygg. Hotel Norge, min hjemby. Hotel Norge akkurat rehabilitert. Her har vi både resepsjon og restaurantinngangen, og ja, andre etasje og konferansedel. Alt lagt med stor terrasso. Så her har vi Hokksund ungdomsskole. Akustikk har vi 4 løsninger på som velkjente, så spør oss om det etterpå. Dekorative og funksjonelle natursteins utebelegg vi ganske så stor på. Steinbelegg og ja, her ser vi litt forskjellige referanser. Så vi har muligheten til å bidra og hjelpe. Også på overflatebeskyttelse og betongrehabiliteringer vi ganske stor. Så så skal jeg vise dagens første film. Mer arkitekter har laget dette flotte prosjektet i Moss. Også nominert til Byggeskikksprisen i Moss. Vi håper jo selvfølgelig at de vinner, men det får jo tiden vise. Så se på denne, se hva vi kan få til. Her viser vi 2 løsninger fra Sto. Luftet kledning, puss på plate. Og så viser vi en rehabiliteringsløsning på kompakte løsninger. Så se litt på det, dette høyaktuelt.
Vi møtte en dame i stad som sa at hun ble glad hver gang hun kom hjem. Ja. Det var hyggelig.
Nå vi på Sjøhagen Brygge, som et transformert industriområde, som ligger bare et steinkast fra Kambo stasjon. Når man bygger nærme sjøen, så må man tenke på robuste materialer, god detaljering og varige løsninger. Så på leilighetsbygget så det jo puss på plate, lufta pusskledning. Og på rekkehusområdet så det pusset på fasadeelementet, fasadeblokker. Det som fint med gjennomfarget puss framfor en malt flate, at det tåler en liten støyt, og det et varig produkt som krever lite vedlikehold.
Og fargesette dette, det var jo en viktig prosess. Så vi startet egentlig med 46 hvite rekkehus som var rammesøkt, og så var det å finne dynamikken, hvor mange farger og et slags underliggende system.
Og farge sammen med materiale og taktile overflad, det jo med på å gi et sted identitet, og som igjen kan skape tilhørighet hos de som bor der.
Når vi har funnet litt paletter vi ønsker å teste ut, så bestiller vi fargeprøver. Etter hvert som vi begynner å nærme oss litt hva vi faktisk ser for oss, så tester vi det i store prøver på plassen, for å se hvordan de spiller med lys og materialene som finnes i naturen og området fra før, for de kan oppleves ganske ulikt fra sted til sted. Så det en veldig gøy prosess, det med farger.
Det har vært fantastisk å jobbe med Sto, som har levert materialprøve på rekordtid og i enorme mengder. Så det samarbeidet, det har vi satt veldig pris på. Med estetisk bærekraft så mener vi bygg som varige, som harmoniske, som vakre, og som folk blir glad i. For hvis folk blir glad i bygg, så det en stor sjanse for at de kan vare lenge. Og det at et bygg varer lenge, det bærekraftig.
Skulle nesten tro at hun snakket etter manus, men det gjorde de altså ikke. En bra film, synes vi. Jeg håper at dere synes det samme. Så skal jeg vise en film til som handler om VMOK og rehabilitering, og se litt på den. Den synes jeg også veldig spennende og viser litt av hva vi kan hjelpe dere med.
Tungtvannsaksjonen i 1943. Kanskje den mest kjente sabotasjen fra andre verdenskrig. Natt til 28. februar risikerer en liten gruppe menn livet for å sprenge tungtvannskjelleren. De lykkes. Nå kan du selv gå i heltenes fotspor og oppleve den sterke historien. Et nytt museumsbygg bevarer kjelleren og historien for fremtiden. Fasadesystem fra Sto valgt som overflate, både utvendig og innvendig. Her Sto signaturbord med Stolit Milano benyttet. Varig, bærekraftig og fuktsikker. Det en bevisst tydelighet og kontrast mellom det originale og det nye. Bruken av glass gjør at du kan se helt ned til kjelleren og de gamle togsporene. Mye arbeid ble lagt til å gjenskape betong og pussoverflatene i det originale bygget. Sto har utrolig mange varianter og muligheter i overflater og overflatebehandlinger, sier arkitekt Bart Burgerhot fra Point. Materialene og kvaliteten gjorde Sto til et helt naturlig valg, fortsetter arkitekten. Sto signatur concrete med Stolit Milano i hovedsak brukt innvendig. Robust, tidløs og bærekraftig. Både landskapet rundt og eksisterende bygninger fredet. Faktisk Rjukan på UNESCOs verdensarvliste. Nå har både historien og et av de viktigste byggene etter andre verdenskrig fått sin fortjente og viktige plass. Vi i Sto stolte av å være en del av historien og Vemørk.
Og det vi gjorde der, jeg kan si litt om det. Det var jo et betongbygg som ble da tilleggsisolert 10-15 cm med rockwool. Og så ble det pusset utvendig. Og den strukturen som dere så, arkitekten sin tanke var jo da å få det gamle historiske bygget ganske likt til det nye. Så da tok vi rett og slett, når mureren pusset og det var fuktig, så tok vi en sjablong og dro over pussen for å imitere den gamle skal vi si, betonglukken i det gamle bygget. Så det ble ganske tro det som ble sluttresultatet her, og det er kult. Så skal jeg avslutte med at vi har storsentre i de aller største byene. Vi har storsentre i Oslo, vi har storsentre nytt i Kristiansand, vi har i Stavanger, vi har i Bergen, vi har i Trondheim, og vi skal etablere oss i Tromsø. Så for Oslo sin del så skal vi da lage en fagdag hvor vi ønsker å invitere arkitektene på storsenteret og få en liten sånn teknisk gjennomgang og gjerne få prøve litt puss og maling og strukturer og inneprodukter og uteprodukter. Men det kommer vi tilbake til, og Arkitektforeningen vil jo distribuere det da. Så da vil jeg takke for at jeg fikk muligheten til å reise fra Bergen i dag og komme til Oslo og fortelle veldig kort om det vi gjør. Og så er dere velkommen innom etterpå, og vær så snill å spis snittene sånn at det er ingenting igjen når vi er ferdig. Så takk for meg.
Da kan Gjelle Bone fra programkomiteen komme opp og presentere dagens forelesning. Vær så god.
Hei. Nå skifter jeg til engelsk, så foreleseren vår i dag også skjønner hva som blir sagt. Okay. Thank you all for being here tonight for the grand finale of this autumn's lecture series. Today's lecture is organized in cooperation with the National Museum in relation to the newly opened exhibition Hand and Machine, which Fala Atelier also is a part of. It's the first architectural exhibition in the new museum, so go see it if you have the chance. My name is Gjelle, one part of the program committee here at OAF, together with Eivind, Ragnhild, Sara and Jonas. This semester's topic is loosely based around the topic of first love. The idea is based on tracking down the formative and basic inspirations that got us interested in architecture in the first place, and what drives us as architects today. Some of these inspirations may be turned into aspirations, while others are left behind. Some may have come back into our lives after many years. So how can we use our personal interests and obsessions to be able to contribute in our own way, while at the same time being professional and staying to the matter of fact? With this, it is a great pleasure to welcome Lera Samovic from Fala Atelier. Fala describes itself as a naive architecture practice, and I can't imagine a better closing lecture around the topic of first love. As a first love often is naive, it has no boundaries, it is open, rejects nothing, and embraces everything. And by building their naiveness, Fala's architecture remains open. Open for use, interpretation, and an open-endedness. Everything and nothing can happen. Maybe never, but probably at the same time. When we reside and work in a place or a culture of architecture that is quite strong, with masters, read CISA, or in our case, FEM, that seem to cast long shadows into the future, it is easy to continue and dwell partly in the shadows. The hard way is to break out and get directly into the sun. Maybe there is an opening, a space to do so, or maybe you have to make that space. Fala and their idiosyncratic architecture seem to have done so, and wander freely beneath the sun. Fala was founded in 2013 and is based in Porto. The atelier is led by Felipe Magelhaas, Ana Luisa Suarez, Ahmed Berkotja, and Lera Samovic. They have lectured, taught, and exhibited at different universities and institutions worldwide, such as Japan, Switzerland, Italy, the US, Canada, Germany, England, France, and Portugal. Fala's work has been widely published in digital and printed media, such as Domus, Bauwelt, and the Architectural Review, as well as their own monographic issues by 2G and A+U. Lera graduated in architecture at the Moscow Architecture School and collaborated with Bureau Alexander Brodsky, Oslo Arkitektforening, and nowadays office in Moscow. Lera joined Fala in 2014, becoming a partner in 2021. She currently is a PhD researcher at the Faculty of Architecture in Porto and is regularly invited as a teacher, guest critic, and lecturer in various international schools and institutions. Today, here at UAF. Please welcome Lera.
Could you put some water maybe on the table? Thanks. So good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for the warm welcome. Yeah, I'm happy to be a part of the lecture series, and we are also happy to be part of the exhibition, The Hand in the Machine. So, as mentioned, we are Fala. We are a small office based in Porto. At the moment, I think we are 9 people, and it seems like the perfect number for our team. We don't want to get much bigger. And as you mentioned, the office was established in 2013, so actually when I'm coming back to Porto, we are having our 10-year birthday party, so I guess that also opens the question if we can still call ourselves naive. Maybe we should know better by now, but at the same time, I guess it is good to always remain naive in a certain way. Yeah, since the theme of the lecture series is first love, I thought that it could be interesting to focus on houses, because 99% of our projects are houses, and if in the beginning it was maybe a bit boring for us in a way, so we were, let's say, scared of being stuck always with the same commissions. I think in a way it became a challenge for us to see the house as an interesting project and to, let's say, keep discovering new ways and new kind of new concepts within the same typology. So on one hand, let's say houses are the same, on one hand they are different, and they're complex and systematic, and I will build this lecture around 9 projects, I think, and I will finish with one of our first, or actually with our first built single-family house to kind of prove the point. And when speaking about houses, we like to refer to these two sentences, 2 quotes by Japanese architects. So one is by Kazuo Shinohara, and he says that a house is a work of art, and the art lies in the ways that the design of the house may bond with the society, and if it does not become a work of art, it has no reason to exist. And although we like to believe that sentence, we also find the next quote quite, let's say, quite true to the reality. So, and the next quote is also by Japanese architect Itsuko Hasegawa, and she was actually the student of Shinohara, so in a way it was a response to what he said. So it was apparent from the start that none of the clients wished me to design a dwelling that would be a creative architectural work. And I think the 2 sentences are true. Although we, with every project, we have, let's say, we have a lot of ambition and a lot of kind of aspirations, but I think every project and every house, they become, let's say, a search for a certain balance between our conceptual aspirations and the kind of the pragmatic requirements imposed by the municipality or the client or the program, the budget, and so on. So I will talk about 9 projects. All of them are houses, different types of houses, and in a way I think they can be grouped into three categories. So the first one would talk about renovations and transformations. Then the second group would talk about houses that are located in some way in a kind of in a dense urban setting, and then the last group is single-family houses, let's say, standing on its own. So the first project is a house of many faces, and it starts from a very, let's say, daring thing that our client did. He decided to buy a huge warehouse and to convert it into a house for himself. And the building, so it's this building without the roof. As you can see, it is located in the area that is not so much residential, so it is surrounded by similar kind of warehouses, and it's an area that is, I would say, a bit abandoned at the moment, but is about to be renovated. So it was, let's say, a peculiar initial condition to start the project. So as you see, the space is rather gigantic, and it's also like this very longitudinal kind of perimeter. And let's say the challenge of the project was conceiving a living space within such an enormous length, and by also, of course, utilizing a lot of elements that were already there. So in terms of the project is kind of split into two parts. The building at the very front becomes some kind of student housing that is supposed to be rented, and then the actual house is located here at the very back. So the idea of that house, I think, was was lying in the attempt to conceive some kind of living space within this archizoom no-stop city-like condition. And the living room actually finds its place underneath the existing sequence of wooden beams that we decided to preserve, and then the tent-like textile ceiling is, let's say, an element that brings a certain domesticity to that space. And then the room is anchored with a couple of objects. One of them is the kitchen, another one is the fireplace or the hearth. So the living room becomes an experiment in that in that vast space. And as I said, it's a lot about utilizing the existing elements and playing with the existing conditions. So let's say the perimeter, the box itself was preserved. We painted the granite walls in white, keeping, let's say, a fragment of the existing cladding as a sort of painting. And then, as you can see, the detail over here, we put a mirror that kind of makes, or that reflects the existing beams and making it infinite. And then let's say the secondary programs, so the bedrooms and the smaller spaces, they're actually located behind a curved wall that is located at the back of the space behind the door that also recalls a project by Shinohara. And at the back of the house where all the bedrooms are, the beams are actually hidden underneath the ceiling. And going back to the title of the project, which is called House of Many Faces, it really has a lot to do with the with the structure of the longitudinal volume, which in a way is cut with a few, let's say, short transversal walls. And those walls, they actually become a series of facades that define the exterior or the outside image of the house. And if you think about it, they are also done with a very simple set of means. So it's a concrete wall that was painted in white, and with a few with a few painted black squares, and simply with two colors of shutters. Let's say we conceived a series of those very very short and small elevations. So the house literally finds itself in between the two walls. Then it has a small courtyard in between the two buildings, so the front one and the back that is actually the house. And let's say the extended space itself is hidden behind this front of the building. And when you look at it a bit from the outside, what we also find, let's say, quite interesting is that one of the not so obvious ways that the building, let's say, claims its presence in the city is the stripy roof, which then can be seen from afar from the bridge when you are driving towards that place. And the building becomes one of the first new actors within the area that is soon to be renovated. So another project is called Oasis under a building. It is also a transformation, and again, it is a transformation of the space that was not meant to be a living space. In that case, it was a former garage or some kind of shop. So it is a space on the ground floor, and these kind of transformations actually happen quite often in our practice, since I think at some point let's say, it started happening in Porto, that people kind of opened the possibility of not only conceiving apartments as spaces for living, but also looking at these not so obvious spaces on the ground floor that are often also abandoned. And although such projects, they pose a bit of difficulty in the sense that usually it's a very long space only with the light at the back and at the front, but at the same time it gives you some kind of access from the street and you have a garden. So for us it is also an interesting, let's say, typology to be working with and to kind of find ways to conceive a living space within the space that was not meant for it. So as you see, the original condition already, let's say, poses some limitations. For instance, the row of columns here, very visible structure, and the kind of the cutout in the space that happens where the staircase of the actual building is. So let's say in order to solve those limitations, what happens is that we introduce one curved wall that kind of smooths the cutout of the staircase. The structure in this case is, let's say, celebrated as an element on its own, and then a couple of diagonal walls are introduced in order to separate the bedroom and in order to have some kind of hallway as you enter the house and to kind of to cut out the noise from the street. And although the plan might seem chaotic, it actually has a logic behind it, a logic that is defined by the grid of the pavement that is slightly tilted. And so in a way you could say that the project is conceived really within a few lines. And then it's about the materiality of the project and maybe not so obvious palette that on one hand I think we would like to think of that space and of many of our projects as let's say spaces that are open to interpretation. So although these are houses, we always say that those spaces could also be I don't know, a gallery, an office, or anything, because it doesn't really have any kind of fixed things that would point directly to a house. And so in case of this project, I think the defining element of the space is the ceiling, the stripy blue ceiling that, as my colleague describes it, is the sky, and then the ceiling, as you see, is multiplied kind of by this cornice of mirrors that goes around the space and kind of grabs all the imperfections into one single thing. And then from the outside, I would say the facade of the building is just what it needs to be. So it is one big window that is open to the garden and that has a kind of a black fronton at the top. I think it is also kind of interesting and funny for us to see how the new finds its way next to the old wall of the neighboring house. And in this case, it is just cladded in those kind of silvery sheets. And then the garden basically remains as it is. The two interventions that are happening is the kind of the same cornice that is extending from the interior space itself, and the two mirrors that become, let's say, eyes that are looking back at the project. So another house, another condition that I just described, so a former shop on the ground floor. In this case, it is a space with 2 levels. And this project, I think, is quite important for us because it was done at the time when we were experimenting with what we call now wireframe drawings. And when speaking about these drawings, it is important to refer a generation or a couple of Japanese architects that were doing same kind of experiments. One of them is Itsuku Hasegawa, as I mentioned before, and one of them is Shinohara. And this kind of drawing was specifically, let's say, fitting for that project because the way the interior space is organized is actually done with two curved walls, and the 2 walls are actually done out of glass brick. And it was done precisely because let's say, as I described in the beginning, the only light you can get into that space is from the front and from the back, so there is no light in the middle. And let's say, in order to solve the light and programmatic issues, we decided to go for some kind of translucent, transparent material in order to make the entire space more livable. So this is the plan of the existing condition, and as you see, the 2 walls are introduced on both levels. They are kind of anchored by the 2 columns. And then let's say the curve becomes the dividing element that separates the public from the private. So the living space is on the empty side of the curve, and then all the bedrooms and bathrooms, they are behind this wall. And as you can see, the entire space is quite fluid. It has a lot of reflections, and again, it introduces to us a kind of a different and a challenging kind of domesticity. And this project was also, I think, interesting because it had a lot of, again, a lot of imperfections and mistakes on site. They're actually coming from what was already there. So in that case, it was the staircase that was going up into the apartments on top. And we decided, instead of hiding that moment, we decided to actually celebrate it and paint it into red. Then a few columns were actually clad in mirrors, so in a way pretending that they are not there. And yeah, the space above it and at the bottom, they although the same, but they also become different because it is a different profile of the actual wall and different relationship, kind of to the rest of the project. And when it comes to the facade of this project, it becomes, let's say, an interesting overlay of references. And in case of this project, we were actually interested in experimenting with the metal mesh that we, let's say, started discovering as a material at that time, and that also kind of pushed us to look a bit more at the work by Hasegawa. And then it brings a painting by Kelly and a drawing by Peter Markley. So one is about the shape and the cutout, and another is about the pattern. So the facade becomes, in a way, an overlay of these three themes or these figures. So there is a cutout, there is a pattern, there is metal mesh, the handrail, but then there is also a mirror behind around the glass that kind of makes it all reflect and dissolve in a way. So the entire project, that's why we called it waves of glass brick and clouds of metal mesh, because the kind of the material palette and the geometry of the curved wall, they kind of turn the space into some kind of misty, cloudy condition that was very interesting for us to explore. So now we come to the second group of projects. Those are the ones that are located in kind of in a more dense urban setup. And the first one is a house within a few gestures, I think we call it. So as you see, it's the house with the metal roof, and it's located in one of those quite small dead-end streets, and it is surrounded by the houses of the same profile. And we, of course, had to follow so kind of the same outline of the roof. So in a way, that was one of the defining conditions of the project. And another one was the fact that, again, the plot was the typical Porto plot, so very, very narrow, very elongated, and let's say challenging in some ways to work with it. So in a way, I think this project is addressing the theme of how to work with a very limited space and how to find a way to actually, let's say, design a house within those conditions. And when speaking about that project, we were quite interested in a series of paintings that was done by Robert Mangold. These ones are called the Arc Studies. And yeah, if you see the plan, the entire project is solved again with a few lines. So the transversal walls, they divide the front facade, the back facade, and one division between the, let's say, the entrance space and the main living area. Then one curved wall solves the bathroom, and another one is kind of makes one of the perimeter walls of the house softer or more kind of more smooth. So the house is, I would say, funny because, for instance, you enter through the bedroom, but at the same time the client was okay with that condition, and it was more important to actually bring the living space towards the garden. But I would say the main gesture that happens in this house is actually in the section. So as I said, the profile of the roof was something that we had to obey, we had to follow, and at some point we actually considered having a 2 levels house, but the the height was actually too small, and the space above was not really comfortable or even usable. So we introduced, I would say, a tent-like ceiling above those spaces, which kind of becomes the defining element of this house. And the ceiling is then painted in red. The floor is done with kind of with a green-blue, quite strong tiles, and so the curves and arcs, they are the white walls that are finding themselves in between the two surfaces. And again, the living room that is defined by the tent-like ceiling and one of the curved walls. I think it becomes a very kind of a space that is quite, let's say, quite diverse. And as you see in the two photos, it changes quite a lot depending on the time of the day, depending on the fact if the shutter is open or closed. And and the room has a direct connection with the garden, which is quite important. And in case of the back facade of this project, I think again the facade is kind of what it needs to be. It's a window, but at the same time we wanted to, let's say, we wanted to make things a bit more, kind of a bit less obvious, maybe, and a bit more complex. So we introduced a free standing column, and we decided to kind of to emphasize and maybe disassemble a bit all the elements. So you see that the shutter becomes kind of a present figure, and then the beam, and then actually the thickness of the roof is hidden, as you can try to see on this photo, is hidden by the mirror. So in a way, even let's say with a very minimal kind of elevation that just needs to be a window, we try to kind of to play a bit more with it and to explore that idea further. And then we also have a lot of photos of this space that are quite, let's say, quite ambiguous and mysterious. And I think we also like those kind of images and like the kind of qualities that they highlight within the project. And this photo actually ended up being on the cover of our A+U, which we found both. Let's say both uncomfortable because you cannot really understand what are you looking at, but at the same time we like it so much for that quality, so that kind of mystery that it presents to the reader. Another project is a house in Lisbon, and we call it a house of countless windows. And this house has a peculiar condition. So when working on the project, we of course had to engage with the municipality, and one of the conditions that was imposed by the city is that the house should have a wall with punched windows. And while addressing that condition, we thought of a trick that actually becomes the defining feature of the house. So we introduced a smaller size of the window, but we introduced, let's say, twice the amount of windows that would be necessary. So the house becomes a bit of a building that is out of scale, but at the same time, again, it presents a different kind of space on the inside. So when it comes to those windows and the kind of the elevation of the house, I think the window almost becomes sort of a pattern, and every opening kind of is topped with a marble lintel, and that also introduces a certain rhythm within the elevation. And on the inside, the house has a peculiar system that also has to do with the fact that the site is actually, so it's not the usual long, narrow plot, but in this case, the site was rotated 90 degrees. And when kind of trying to figure out how to put the staircase and how to, let's say, to achieve the amount of program that we were asked for, we came up with a system of split levels. And so we have split levels and we have a lot of windows, and at that point I think the house almost becomes a mathematical theorem in a way, because it has to do kind of we had to find the perfect measurement for the slab, for the floor, for the window, and it was really, let's say, a funny geometrical and mathematical exercise in how to make all the elements meet and match. So it was really about grids and overlays and systems in a way. And so when it comes to the plan of the house, the staircase is in the very middle, and one could even say that the house is basically one room that is repeated many times because every room is the same room because of exactly of that kind of mathematical precision. And then on each side of every room, so at the back there is a small space that is either the bathroom or the storage space. And so as you see, it's a lot about those grids and alignments and so on. But then it's also about this series of transversal walls that are actually made of glass bricks. So again, in that project, we are kind of continuing this research of transparency and how such kind of material can be utilized in a house. And I think I could also say that it's just that we discovered glass brick, I don't know, a year or two ago, and we are kind of still excited with the qualities that it can introduce into the space. So I would expect that still quite a few of our projects in the future would be working around that theme. And so when it comes to the interior of the house, so although it's a long plot, but then rotated 90 degrees, and then it's a series of transversal walls. What's also peculiar about this house is that the living room is actually located at the very top, and to celebrate or to make the room different in some way, we introduced this vault-like kind of ceiling that that marks the space as the public, as the living space within the house. And this project was also, I think, happening around the same time when we were doing our research on the Japanese architects. So I think it also was influenced quite a bit by the things that we discovered back then. And so we were also trying to play with the certain themes that we found in those projects. And then I think from the outside, the house becomes. On one hand, it's normal because it's let's say it's a white wall with a lot of windows. But what is funny is that if you start looking closely, the scale of the house is actually broken. And when you see a person in the window, it can be just that you see, let's say, the top, or you see the feet of the person that lives on the inside. So it's an interesting game that is happening there. The next project takes us back to Porto. We call it Housing with Pink Chimneys. And it was also a building that, on one hand, was very much defined by the regulations of the city. So as you see, the dashed line of the volume is something that we had to obey. We had to follow it. So let's say we found ourselves with a project where the volume was already something that was given, and we had to act inside of it. And what was also quite special about this house was the fact that the side wall of the building was open, because let's say in the normal conditions those houses would be standing right next to each other, but until this small building on the side will also become a stall, this wall would be completely open. So let's say as a special moment within this project, we thought that it would be nice to also not to clad this wall into those corrugated metal sheets as it's usually done, but to celebrate this moment and to make this facade also part of the scape of the city. And so the entire volume of this building is actually wrapped in a pattern, which is dots and lines of marble that are placed on top of the white plaster. And the main interest that we found in this project was actually, in a way, how you conceive a staircase within such a volume, because the staircase, let's say, is also something that is heavily regulated. But we found a way to to make the staircase in a less obvious way, and in that sense to maximize the space that could be used around that staircase. So in that sense, let's say the way the circulation space within this building is organized, it becomes the defining feature of the entire house, and in a way it becomes more important than the interior organization of the three apartments. So these are the images of the circulation space, and you see that the staircase above has a curved ceiling, and then here the space is also quite complex because of all the intersections, kind of, and juxtapositions in order to kind of to get as much living area as possible. And then you see that within the apartments, those kind of those elements that are painted in blue, they become the moments where the staircase kind of gets into the apartment. So here the staircase is above the surface, but at the same time the space underneath is still usable. And the same happens in kind of on every level and in different ways. So we we both found ways to maximize the living area and at the same time to introduce a certain kind of complexity within those spaces. And it is always funny for us to see, let's say, how those buildings, when following the regulations, how they meet their neighbors. In some cases, also in case of this project, the marble pattern actually kind of comes over a bit on the side of the neighbor. And then from far, you can actually see an extremely tall pink chimney, which was also, again, not something that we decided to do, but it was a height that one has to follow. It should be like 1.5 meters higher than the neighbor, so therefore the house all of a sudden gained kind of an element that becomes the defining figure within that composition. And now we are moving to the series of let's say single family houses in the suburbs. So in that sense, those are maybe projects that are a bit more free in how the volume is conceived, but still, as we will see, there are still kind of moments that we have to consider. So the first one is a house within three gestures. It's a house in the suburbs of Porto. And this was the corner plot, as you see on the site plan, but the shape, the outline of the plot was already quite bizarre, and then if you take the offset of that plot, it actually leaves you with with an outline for the project that is quite defined before you go there. And since it's a house, and I think that's a given for every house, there is always a certain grid or a certain sequence of smaller programs, so bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, garages, and so on. And so this was the logic that we introduced for the secondary spaces of the house, and then because of the outline of the plot, we found a way to introduce a curved wall that would actually, let's say, becomes an element again that finds a smooth line within the irregular outline of the plot. And so in a way, the main living space of the house is defined by three surfaces. One of them is the curved wall. One of them is the stepped sequence of walls that separates the secondary spaces, and then the third line actually comes from the section, and it's the sloped ceiling that covers the house and becomes higher towards the living area. So the photos of the living room, I think the space is still quite simple, but because of the outline of its elements, it still becomes a peculiar spatial condition for the living room. And in that project, it was also quite interesting to work with the clients, because they paid a lot of attention to the bathroom tiles and the kitchen without really understanding what's happening in the living room. But they certainly were kind of pleasantly surprised when they saw the final outcome, and they finally understood what they were looking at. And when it comes to the outside volume of the house, a few funny things happened here. We introduced a tower actually above the program that is the most, let's say, the not so special one. The tower happens above the laundry, but at the same time, the space, the vertical space, is used to place all kinds of machines and heat pumps and so on. And another element that is important in that elevation is the pink triangle, which is the chimney. And I think we also, after talking to a couple of neighbors, we discovered that the house does not really look like a house to the people that live nearby, and they call it a church, a gallery, or something else, but not a house itself. And moving to the next house, this one is the house with an inverted roof. It is also in the suburbia of Porto, and when speaking about that project, we like to go back to that image, which is a drawing done by Kazushi Nohara for his house in Uehara. And as you see, let's say the house doesn't really fit, let's say, into the, well, Japanese suburbia in that case, and it looks extremely different from its neighbors. So the house that we did basically takes one gesture, which is the inverted roof, which changes the image of the project. In that case, I think this project is a lot about the outside volume, and I would say that the previous project and that one, I think they also became important projects for us, because we quite often, as you've seen in the lecture, find ourselves in the condition where the volume is already defined. But with those projects, we actually started to experimenting with the exterior and to assemble those kind of volumes ourselves, which was also quite a challenge. But at the same time, you see that the facade of the house is quite simple if you kind of start to recount its elements. It's a white box. It stands on top of a plinth, let's say, that is the living room, and the plinth is defined by the glass brick wall on one side and the window on the other. And then the white box at the top is basically organized with a few openings, and again the two tones of shutters, they maybe bring a bit more abstraction into that composition. And the two images of the house, they are, I think, also quite different from each other. And then when we speak about the inside of the house, I think in that sense the project is maybe quite logical and quite obvious. So the living space is the space on the ground floor connected to the garden. Then the level in the middle is the level where you have quite some bedrooms, and then a space on the right that is the office or the studio space that is open to the living room below. And then let's say the master bedroom finds itself on the top level underneath the curved ceiling. But what is special about this house is the fact that the structure is separated from the wall, and I think it is quite interesting for us to see how, depending on the space, depending on the room, the green columns they claim their presence, but they appear in very different ways. And then from the middle level, the staircase takes you to the master bedroom underneath the curved ceiling. That is also quite interesting for us, that space. And so the final project, our first built house, that also took quite some years to finalize. But I think what we are also happy about in this project is that, in a way, one could say that it aged well for us. So we are still quite excited with the outcome. It is a house for 3 generations, and as the title suggests, it was about program-wise, it was about conceiving a house with three bedrooms, so three cores of private programs. And since the house itself was, of course, a square, because I think also in the very beginning of our practice we could not yet draw a new project without it being a square. Somehow there was this interest in, let's say, in a perfect kind of element, and we found a way of dividing the square not in the most obvious way, perhaps. So there is one diagonal line, one straight line, and one curved wall, and so the three lines, they separate the three bedrooms. And what I think is funny about this project is that both the three bedrooms, they get quite different qualities, but at the same time the main living space, which becomes the negative of that division, also gets quality and a peculiar kind of outline. And then there are smaller divisions within those bedrooms to introduce bathrooms and so on. And then there is one point in the living room, which is the column, and which is kind of the only element that does not obey the logic of the house. And so, the house is again organized, I think, by a very kind of limited set of gestures. So it's a square with a dot on the inside and with a few lines that are then covered by a roof with a small slope and a chimney that kind of finalizes the volume. So the collages of the interior space are also kind of centered around the column, and what is quite special about that column is that actually the column doesn't touch the ceiling, so it's an element that is not needed for the structural integrity of the house. It's an element that is rather symbolic, and for us I think it becomes rather kind of an anchor point that helps maybe to organize the living space and becomes the kind of slightly shifted center of gravity of the house. Again, when we come to the zoom out image of the project, the house becomes a bit of a strange cousin within the neighborhood. And on one hand, it fits, but on the other hand, it's clearly something that is different. And so to summarize our practice, I would bring back the discussion that we had with my colleagues a while ago, a year ago or something. One of my colleagues, he brought the two quotes from Karl Popper that I think are quite fitting to describe the condition that we find ourselves in. So it's from an essay of Clouds and Clocks. So one of them is, clocks are intended to represent physical systems which are regular, orderly, and highly predictable in their behavior. And another one is about clouds that are intended to represent physical systems which, like gases, are highly irregular, disorderly, and more or less unpredictable. So I think what this means to us is that within every project there is, there is always a layer that is in some way rational and understandable, and it has to do with structures, square meters, programs, and so on. But then what is extremely important for us is this layer that has to do with so-called clouds, or that has to do with one could call fiction. So this kind of quality within the project that, that disrupts the regular. So on one hand, it is always understandable, like the one big window that defines the back facade of that project. But at the same time, there are moments like this that bring a certain unpredictable and surreal quality to that space, which is important to us and which we try to achieve and celebrate in every project. And this is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for a very, very nice lecture. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much for the lecture. It was really nice. I had a question about how you're. That I find that there are so many similarities between the projects and consistency. And I was wondering if you use such a word as style to describe the project, if you have style, or another way to describe this. That it doesn't have a project and it sort of gives you an answer, what it wants to be, maybe. And then you are 9 people, you say, and if you have like this style, how do you kind of find it together?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can use different words to describe it. It can be a style, a language. What we also say in the office quite often is that that for us, it's, I mean, of course, projects themselves on their own, they are important, but I think what is also interesting for us is to look at this kind of as a family of projects or as an archipelago even. And there are certain, I would say, themes and especially elements and materials, as you saw, that are repeated from project to project. But on one hand, I think we understand that it might be a bit limiting to let's say, to focus too much on one single theme or a series of themes that are interesting for us. But I think it also kind of, it happens naturally that, like as I mentioned, we are now, like we have this fascination for the glass brick because we never used it before, and as we discovered the material, we are interested in using it in different projects and in different ways. But at some point, we also get tired or we get bored, and we find that the theme or the element kind of exhausts itself. And in that sense, I think there is some kind of natural evolution or development of that style, language, or whatever you can call it. But I would also say that there is no, I don't know, Fala guideline in our office. It really, I think, happens somehow naturally. Yes, we are 9 people, and I think what brings us together is that we, let's say, we share kind of a certain image, or let's say our set of references between all the colleagues. It's kind of within the same field. So in that sense, it is easy for us to work together and to understand each other and to kind of to see what we mean. But I think also from time to time, one of us kind of likes to indeed to challenge the kind of the obvious thing, and to kind of to break free from that circle. So yeah, both kind of, it's there, but I think it's not a static style, but it's a style that is always kind of evolving and turning into something that we don't know yet what it's going to be.
Thank you. Are there any more questions?
Thank you. Maybe a little bit strange, but I would like to start by saying that Fala's architecture was for me always a little bit mysterious. And I like it. I mean, this is okay. It consists of very many things. It's extremely intellectual on one side. It's, how to say, very sensual on the other side. It's conceptual. It's very well drawn. Your plans are super interesting. It's like clouds and clocks at the same time. And I would like to ask you now, when you get a project, how do you decide? Well, this is my obsession. You know, I would like to know what I'm doing and what are the reasons for things and so on, you know. And you get a project, and how do you decide that you make a house with a pink chimney? Huh? Or I could give you some other examples. But this is kind of interesting for me, you know, because I appreciate very much, I must tell you. But I would also like to know things. It's not that you meet and one of you is saying, well, let's do the house with a pink chimney. And the other guys are saying, well, let's try. And then you do it. So tell me how you you could even extend it to the first moment when you started to work. How did you decide that you will do that what you are doing? Because it is extremely consistent from the first moment, I would say. This is one of the offices which are probably the most consistent, which is a paradox. But so how you decide this thing? How you decide? Okay.
No, it's a hard question. I mean, of course it is specific from project to project. But I think when answering that question, I would go back to the idea of clocks and clouds. Like if we take the example of the house with pink chimneys. It actually has 3 chimneys at the top, and so the location was, of course, defined by the location of the bathrooms on the lower levels. So this is, let's say, this is fixed, this is given. Then the height of those chimneys is also given, as I said, because let's say, the top of the chimney has to be much higher than the neighbor. And let's say we end up with an image of the building with those kind of 3 very tall and very kind of very present and dominating almost kinds of elements. So, and then, kind of when facing that condition, we understand that we either can try to let's say, try to disguise these chimneys, or we can try to celebrate this element. And here, I guess here comes the clouds, and here just comes our intention to glorify this maybe slightly absurd given condition, and we paint the chimneys in pink. So, of course, I would say every decision is it has a different percentage of the objective and the subjective, but there is always the moment of choosing a color, or the moment of drawing a curved wall that does not necessarily have a rational reason behind it. But I don't know, I guess it's already somewhere at the back of our heads, so maybe it has to do with a certain vocabulary of the practice that we have developed while working on our projects. It also has to do with the set of references. For instance, I mentioned a few Japanese architects, and I think we have quite a big fascination for this period of Japanese architecture between 1960s and 1990s. So I think also a lot of our language is referred to that period. So I think I would also name it as one of the reasons of our decisions. But I think we're also open to some kind of experimentation, and we are, when it has to do with houses, we are interested in always trying a project that in some way is different from the previous one. So it also has to do with that. But I mean, I don't know, did I answer more or less? Yeah.
No, it's okay, it's okay. Thank you.
I am really curious to hear how you work with your clients, because a lot of them are like single-family homes, and you have a lot of creativity and ideas. And how are the clients' wishes implemented, and do they take a part of the creative process, or are they kind of trusting you to do what you do?
So this is let's say a question with many layers. So our clients, they are absolutely normal middle class Portuguese families. They are not architects. They are not really interested in architecture, and they come to us not because we are Fala, not because they have seen our website or a magazine with us, but just because a friend of a friend of a friend said there is an architect, you can call them. And they actually need us not because they not because they are interested in the process of designing a house together, but because they need someone to submit the project to the municipality, and they, I think, don't expect much from us in terms of in terms of kind of any kind of ideas. But that's where, let's say, that's where we seize the opportunity, and we kind of slowly start to engage and to design the project with them, to work, and kind of it's a step-by-step process. And I would say that it also depends quite a lot on the client. In some cases, I think many clients, they, like I mentioned in one of the houses, they are really interested in specific moments, like kitchens are the absolute favorite, I would say. It's always a big discussion, or the bathroom. So they are rather interested in this kind of very practical day-to-day moments within the house, and while working on that, we are also trying to let's say steer their attention into the other parts of the project. And it's I would say it's a challenge with some clients. It's a struggle. Some clients don't really understand the project until it starts to be built. We had also a couple of clients that came to us because we are Fala, and that was also an extremely exciting process of working with them. And I think they even they knew what to expect from us, and maybe when we gave them the expected, they say, okay, no, now we want something completely different. And I think that was also a nice way to push us forward. But so let's say the part of communicating with most of our clients is completely unromantic, and it definitely lies within the rational sides. And the most defining arguments in those conversations are about prices per square meter and so on and so forth. So as I was already saying today in a different talk, that there is the reality that has to do with the rational, with the clients, with the Excel files and let's say execution drawings. And then there is so this is actually the clocks maybe, and this is the clouds. So the reality that has to do with our ambition and drawing, and our kind of certain fascinations within projects. And those realities, maybe they overlap just a little bit, but nevertheless the projects happen, and they through our persistence they find a way. And we often say, I think in other lectures and in some texts, that we are doing architecture that was not asked for. So we are trying to sneak the project into the conversation, and then eventually it happens.
Any other questions?
Thank you for a very interesting lecture with very engaging illustrations. I just have a question about process, I suppose. These very beautiful drawings you showed, where you reduce the plans or the sections to just a few lines and curves. I was very curious about those drawings. Do you make them at the end of the process to present the final product, or are they present through the process from the start? And if so, it would be very interesting to see some sketches and versions that you did not end up using. And are those lines and curves, are they made with pen and paper or CAD software? How do you do it? Thank you.
No, actually, when we the first time we tried this kind of single line drawing was, I think, for some kind of publication, when we decided to, instead of publishing the proper plan of the house, we wanted to make it more on the diagrammatic side. Then we started experimenting more with this kind of drawing. We decided to redraw a few projects in that sense, and we actually realized that it's quite a helpful working tool. And I think for a long time now we are actually using those single line drawings from the very beginning of the project, because let's say it gives you exactly what you need. In our case, so you have the perimeter of your project, or whatever given condition, and then at the very beginning, you don't really need to to think if the wall is going to be 15 centimeters or 20 or so on. And in that case, I think just one single line becomes everything that you need to to understand what kind of spatial division you are trying to do there. And I think it also actually relates quite directly to the way that most of us sketch on paper, like when we have a conversation and when we try to scribble a plan. If you think about it, it's always a plan without the wall thickness, so you just do a sketch, and in that sense I think it's also a very direct relationship with the simple head drawing. But I would also say that most of the time we work directly on the computer screen, and yeah, we are really comfortable with that, and we don't even print things that much. So it's really that the discussions in our office, they happen in front of one of the monitors, and we just stand around and discuss.
Okay, thank you very much, Lera, for a very nice lecture.
Thank you.
Tusen takk for at dere kom alle sammen. Og baren holder åpen til klokken 9, eller til sistemann har gått, hvis dere går før klokken 9. Og det er bare å komme og spørre spørsmål til Lera. Vi blir her litt grann. Tusen takk. Vi ses på julefest.
It's a book about the Venice Pavilion, at the Biennale, and the whole process.